Welcome to the Digital Golfer Podcast, where we unlock the power of technology and data. From tips to performance insights, we talk to coaches and players about how tech is changing the game.
Hi, welcome everybody to Perform 72. Today we've got Momo Kobori with us. Momo, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
That's great. You're over in New Zealand. I'm in Indonesia at the moment, so we're pretty much on the same timeline, which makes this a little bit easier. Momo, I had the pleasure of caddying for a couple of rounds last year in the German Masters. You never stopped smiling. It was fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of it. And we had a good round as well. I think we shot 68. Do you remember?
I think it was, yeah. It was actually I really enjoyed that, and that was a lot of fun for sure.
It was good. It was my first experience caddying on the Ladies European Tour with you, and I really enjoyed it. So you've now been on the Ladies European Tour for 2 years, and today what we're going to have a chat about is data-driven coaching, really. So talk about how we prepare for the season, and have a look at some of the technology that's out there, some of the technology you use, what you don't use, and what your plans are for the coming year. So second year on the LET, I think you finished 26th in the order of merit, which was fantastic. I think the previous year you finished about 95th. So huge improvement for you. How did it go? Talk us through it.
Yeah, so I think I was first of all, I think I was really happy with how the year kind of shaped up. It wasn't quite like a linear progression, I think, like throughout the season. Had a couple of, pretty high points and a couple of bits in the middle where I wasn't quite happy with how it performed. But yeah, definitely happy with like the finish at 26th. Like you said, it was a big jump from previous year, which meant that I could actually have a bit of an off season, which was really nice. Not have to kind of worry about going back to Q school in December and things like that, and actually come home for a decent amount of time, which was really nice. It was actually quite good. Like I probably had quite a few areas where I noticed that there was a pretty big difference from the previous year. I think it made a big difference, more so than I thought it would, to be able to come back the second time to a lot of the courses and kind of know how the way the tour is shaped and everything like that. So it was definitely a big step up in terms of experience for me, which I think for sure helped as well. But yeah, it was good.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you carry 19 course planners around with you in your bag to go back to the old course, and or do you remember everything?
I definitely would not remember everything. I wouldn't trust myself to, for sure. I mean, we do have. I mean, we kind of accumulate them during the year as well. And I mean, some courses we have doubles of them, and I try and bring them all back and store it in my house. So we've got quite a few collections of it by now. But yeah, like it does definitely kind of doesn't become repetitive in any way, but it's more, I think every time you do kind of pick up new things here and there, but it is also like there's a lot of similarities from the previous years, which is definitely helpful. I think, kind of I didn't really expect that to be the case coming in. So
well, they've thrown a few new courses in this year, I've noticed. So the German Masters has moved somewhere else, and a few others. So that will be more of a challenge for you to perhaps go and see new courses. So I took a quick look at your stats, and obviously when I caddied for you, I was super impressed with the amount of greens you were hitting, and because you're quite conservative off the tee, I should say, in terms of distance. But you're getting it out there. I was looking at your numbers. 234, I think, was your average drive. Now they only take that generally on one or two holes, so it's not always fully representative of the distance you're getting. You hit 70% of fairways, 63% of greens. You're averaging about 3 birdies around, and you were getting up and down 60% of the time. So those were some of the stats that I get off the LET. What are the stats that you take a look at as you go through the season? What are the stats that have shown you things, and what are the stats that you're perhaps going to add this year to try and prepare for this season?
Yeah, so at the moment I'm using the stat system Upgame, which is actually similar, the same one that the tour uses. So like the data, it's very similar to some of the others that a lot of the girls use as well. Put in all the, all the shots and get the feedback back from it, and I've found it very helpful personally, because I do base a lot of my practice, or sorry, highlight the areas that I want to practice based off of those stats. So yeah, like if you throw in a few things, I think one of the things that was on my top 3 work-ons was actually like the number of fairways I was hitting. So I was losing shots off the tee, not necessarily because I wasn't hitting it as far, but we did kind of do a recap of it and figured that, okay, look, if I do increase the number of fairways I'm hitting by, I think it was about 1.5 per round, which isn't a
Okay.
horrendous amount, then that will bump me up in the rankings amongst the other elite players and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's stuff like that that allows me to kind of shape my practice and actually allow me to use my time in areas that make a bit of a difference, rather than spending times where it's probably not going to save me as much of a shot than working in the areas some areas would be. So yeah, I mean, for me, like going
Yeah.
forward, I think that's one
Do you
of
have
my areas. Yeah.
carry on?
Oh yeah, no, carry on. You go.
So you have I mean, when I was there last year, I spoke to a lot of golfers about data, and I think when you're out on tour, you often get stuck into the routine of tour, don't you? You spend as much time trying to book a hotel and a flight and make sure your luggage gets there and everything else as
Yeah.
you're going around and playing 19 times on 30 weeks. It's a tough schedule. So a lot of the girls were saying, yeah, I try and keep up with it, but I try and do the reviews with the coach, but they don't always happen. Do you feel, I mean, how important is it to you? And do you have a data analysis process that you go through?
I had a couple of chats to I had a couple of chats to the guy who is in charge of Upgame. I had a bit of a connection between him and my former coach, and so I had a chat with him, and I actually spoken to one of the guys from home. He's a national coach of Golf New Zealand, Jay Carter. So I've actually had a chance to chat with him and just go through the stats, because, as a golfer, I think, this isn't just for me, but for a lot of golfers in general, like our job is to, play golf and, get through the course, get through the tournament and play golf basically. And so I think a lot of the times there are areas where we would look at stats and we would not necessarily see the whole picture or see like the important data. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things that's really important is to, and look, some people I'm sure do it really well. But then again, there has been instances where I would go through the review system and then actually be surprised with what it's showing me. So it wouldn't quite match up with what I feel should be the case. So I feel like that's always an interesting one.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people I speak to say that, there's some insight that comes out of it, and you sort of again get into a rhythm of playing the way you play. And you need to do that deep dive, and something will pop out, won't it? Something will. I mean, did anything in particular surprise you this year with your stats? Is there anything you went, wow, I had no idea I was doing that?
Yeah, there was probably one thing that surprised me. I mean, one thing surprised me positively, one thing that surprised me, in a negative way as well. I think you might have mentioned like the number of like the greens I was hitting. And I was kind of looking through it, like on the LET app, you can kind of look through where you sit in comparison to other players. I'm just like way down on the list in the number of greens I'm hitting.
Yeah.
Which was actually quite
Mm.
surprising, because like I thought I was generally fairly accurate off the tee, fairly accurate with irons. Turns out it's not so much the case. So that was a bit of an eye opener for me in a good way, for me to be like, oh, okay, well, there is a gap here that I can actually make up, and what do I, then need to do about it? So that's actually been one of my key areas to focus on, which has been really nice. Yeah, and then I think short game was the other one that I was kind of surprised with as well, like the percentages of up and downs and like the shots gained and things like that. That I was actually gaining quite a bit. Um, on the stats system. So that was actually a nice kind of surprise for me to go, okay, like cool, like this, I'm doing something right here, and I do need to kind of keep up this level, but this is at a fairly good point. So yeah, sometimes you get some feedbacks that are not quite what you expect in both ways.
Well, it's also quite interesting because if you miss greens, you give yourself the opportunities to get up and down. So the stats can be a little twisted, and you have to put context to a lot of those things. When you miss greens, when I was watching you in Evian, I came and watched you play 2 rounds in Evian, and again, I think you got to 2 or 3 under par there. And I was surprised. When you miss greens, you're on the aprons. There's nothing horrific going on, and gave yourself good opportunities to get up and down off aprons from everywhere. So, we have to add a little bit of context to the stats when we look at them, don't we? But
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I love the fact that you've found some good stuff and some bad stuff. Do you think there's anything that's missing in your data collection? I mean, if I give you a couple of examples, one of the girls I was talking to asked me to if I could take data from her blood sugar monitor that she was wearing, because she wasn't diabetic, but she felt that she felt a bit lethargic sometimes, and she was trying to identify what foods potentially were causing problems with her being a little lethargic. If she went in and had a big carb-based lunch, a lot of rice or something like that, it could really affect her blood sugar levels. Is there anything else that you think's missing that you'd really like to start to dig into?
Yes, yeah, that's actually really interesting. I hadn't heard of that before, but then like it makes, total sense, like I think I know a couple of girls who are, and then like I haven't really had too many chats with them, but like that would totally make sense because like things like that would 100% have an impact on performance out on the golf course. So I think for me is I've started to use, you're familiar with the Whoop band, that the tour kind of, they're one of the supporters of the tour, and which allows you to track sleep recovery. Oh, you got one. Perfect. There we go. And which is actually really interesting. It is kind of more of I think, a lifestyle tracker kind of thing per se, like rather than more specific to golf. So like I feel like it is always interesting to kind of see, like kind of track your recovery, your sleep, like the habits of your daily habits that might be potentially causing it, and then connect that to how that has an impact on golf and potentially on what areas, whether that be consistency because throughout the tournament because you're running out of energy at the end of the week, or whatever the case might be. So I think that would be a very interesting area to kind of make a bridge between like your more of a daily life recovery stats to how it impacts on the golf course, because everything will have an impact, I'm sure, and I think it's probably something that I haven't seen before. Like it's probably the same as that case you just mentioned as well. It's like two separate fields of data that hasn't quite been connected. So yeah, I think that would be a really interesting area to dive into.
Yeah, I think I don't think we know the answer to a lot of these questions, but with my company, with Perform 72, we're already taking the Whoop data, and I'm correlating Whoop data for people with their scores. Sleep is important when you're on tour. Again, I had another girl come to me who said she doesn't sleep. She literally said, 4 a.m. I'm wide awake. But she also said to me in the same breath, she said, I had 3 hours sleep the first time I went on tour, the night before I played my best game I've ever played. So, gathering the data may not give you a positive answer or a negative answer. You just got to start to look for the correlations. So, no, that's interesting. It'd be really interesting to look at some of your other scenarios and see whether we can start to add those into into what you're doing. So, you and I had a quick chat offline about some of the psychology you're doing, the mental work you're doing. Do you want to give us some insight into what you're doing there? Did that come from data analysis? Did it come from subjectivity in terms I don't feel great on the course? What was it? Talk us through it.
Yeah, so it was so I'm working with a mental performance coach back here who's based in New Zealand, John Quinn. He's actually been great. Like I've worked with him for the last couple of years. He's done a lot of work with a lot of other sports teams outside of golf, which I thought was interesting, and to hear about the similarities and stuff like that's been really good. So basically, I think when I first started working with him, I was in the process of transitioning from the Australian tour onto the LET Access, which then I was hoping to go onto the LET. So I was kind of in that process of making that transition onto the more international, the bigger tours and things like that. And one of the things I had always been probably set me back was being able to take my practice and the things that I've done out onto the golf course with a free mindset without the I guess the distraction of the outcome of the golf course, which is obviously hard because we always have a lot of chat about it, and it's always going to be there, and we can't control that. Like the leaderboard's always going to be out there. You know that there's a cut after 2 rounds. You know that roughly where you sit and things like that. So I think a lot of the work with him has been around working on the things that we can control, whether that's in the preparation stage or whether that's in the during the tournament round. So yeah, so that has been a big game changer for me. I think one of the areas, like one of the reasons behind like my the change difference in results from 2 years ago to last season. I think that's one of the big areas that had made change, not necessarily made changes in that period, but more the work that had been done kind of second end of the first year to throughout till now. So I think it's an area where it can make a huge difference, especially in the field of golf. I think it's such a mental game. I think a lot of people say that, but 100% agree. So
Yeah, it is. I mean, I did 6 months work with a lady called Jane Story, who wrote a book called Breathe Golf, and she talked very much about trying to get into the flow state. Now, the flow state is, it's a complicated place. Having spent 6 months with Jane, every Wednesday we had an hour with her and her team talking through how we get athletes to prepare to get into the flow state. And it really is a nothingness. If you read any of the Zen books, it's about having a nothing state. I read a book in the summer as well called Golf Beneath the Surface, and it talked very much about a being state of mind as opposed to a doing state of mind. Have you recognized any time you're playing in the flow state? Do you understand the concept, or have you come across the being state of mind versus the doing state of mind?
yeah, I think it's a difficult one, like for me personally. I think because I'm relatively to everyone, I'm probably more inexperienced at it than the people that have, mastered it. Whether you do ultimately master it, but yeah, I think in golf, I think you always have that state of mind where you are. Sorry, let me just put this differently. I think for me, like personally, it comes down to like the level of focus and what you're focusing on. And so like it was funny, like one of the things that I've worked on with Quinny throughout the years was like, okay, like our mind does do different things. Like it's going to go places and it's just going to kind of do its thing. But the question is, how are we going to be able to bring ourselves back to the place where we know that this is where we want, like the ideal place? And yeah, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because like it's a lot of it's not out of your control, but I think over time as you train, and I think this is ultimately about practicing it, and I think it's going to take a lot of time, but it's just as you practice and kind of get yourself into the habit of being able to recognize where you are right now and then to where you want to be and be able to make that transition. I think that's really the key to be able to kind of, make that switch as soon as, as smooth as possible, I think, over the course of time. But again, I'm still in the process of working on it for sure. So
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge in this area because the very fact I speak to people who say, I try to bring myself back to a flow state during a round, but you can't do that because you're in the doing state of mind. You're trying to do something to get yourself back to the flow state. And it's a strange thing, but you sort of got to let it happen. It's called the flow state because it just flows. We accept what we've been dealt. We accept what we're thinking. We accept thoughts are going to come, and then we prepare ourselves for flow state. So tell me about your practice. When you say your mental practice, what does that consist of?
So I think it kind of impacts a lot of different areas. So I'm not sure whether it's specifically, classified as, mental performance practice, but it's actually very simple things. So basically all of it's done. So the goal of it is for me to be able to go into a tournament knowing that I've done everything that I possibly can and allow myself to be able to perform as freely as possible. So that's really the goal of it. And it's interesting. One of the things that has helped me tremendously has been planning ahead of time. So like an example, again, like I'm not sure whether it specifically relates to mental training. It's more of a like in general, like life habits kind of thing. But look, like at the beginning of the week, I would, know roughly what the week's going to look like. I know when the practice rounds are, pro-am, tournament rounds. So I would kind of break those down and go, okay, here is the list of things that I would like to get done by the time the tournament starts. How am I going to block those in throughout the 3 or 4 days of preparation that I have, and still give myself enough time to recover, to connect with family and friends, to sleep, etc., etc. Because all of the above is going to have an impact on performance. So I think, and I do the same thing for before the pre-tournament preparation period, or whether I do it for like the warm-up stages. So I just have a rough plan of everything, which then allows me to go through with it and be like, okay, these are the things I need to do. I've done them to the best of my ability, and then I can go in with a clear mindset. So I think ultimately it's just down to, like I said, it's probably just about ticking the boxes and knowing that I've done what is needed. I have kind of ticked off everything off the recipe of success, as we call it. And then like the rest is kind of out of the control. So I think golf is a really interesting one as well, because there's just so many elements where it is out of your control, and ultimately you can really only do what you can do, which has actually taken me a long time to understand, is that you can do everything within your power, but you might still not get the outcome you want, which is at times an infuriating thing. But but here we are again, and still going at it, and I think that's one of the beauties about the game as well. So but yeah, that's definitely one of the things that I've been working on and has helped me a lot. So yeah, it sounds so simple, but it does make a bit of a difference.
Well, it's the Scotty Scheffler, isn't it? You ask Scotty Scheffler what he's doing, and he says, "I've done everything in my power to make sure I'm ready to walk out in the first tee. So I'm not nervous when I get there because I've done it. I know what I have the ability to do." But I think also around the mental side of the game, it's also finding yourself in particular situations and making good decisions. Being able to calm your nervous system. You and I got to 4 under par in Germany, if you remember. And I think we got to 4 under par after 7 or 8 holes or something. And I got nervous. And I said to you afterwards, if you remember, I said, I didn't say anything. Obviously, I was there to pick up and shut up sort of thing. But when I came off, I said, "Were you nervous when you got to 4 under?" And you said to me, "Yeah, I was, So, because then in your mind, you're thinking, can I get to 6? Where can I be on the leaderboard sort of thing? So being able to build the mental fortitude to deal with those situations as well, because that changes your physiology. So interesting. So are you doing any meditation?
So repeat that last part. It just glitched a little bit.
Yeah, I said, are you doing any meditation?
Yeah, I'm not actually. I am not. It's one of the things that I have been told that I think you might have been one of the people that told me it's a good thing to get me to for me to get into. No, I haven't actually. I think it's definitely one of the things that could probably be helpful for me. Um, and probably one of the things that I should be doing that I don't. But it's yeah, I think it's like you said, I agree. Like, when you said that it's in the moment being able to kind of calm down your nervous system and get yourself back to the normal state or be able to or an area where you are able to perform. I think meditation is probably one of the things that's going to kind of train that ability, if I'm correct in saying that. I think, but yeah, yeah. I have had multiple people kind of
Yeah, I mean,
talk to me about it. And
yeah, I think if you, Jane used to teach us that, the attention span's very short. I think 5 years ago, they were talking about a human's attention span being 7 seconds. I read
yeah,
something this year that said our attention span is reduced to 3 seconds. I've got
really,
a number of children, and I can tell you their attention span is somewhere between 3 and 7 seconds. That's it. Um, so, if you think you're out on the golf course, what do you do today if your attention starts to wander? You pick your phone up and you look at something else to stimulate you generally if you're not
yeah,
on the golf course. So
yeah,
I think mindfulness and meditation, they are different things. The term is used interchangeably, but they are different things. I think allowing you to sort of concentrate more efficiently and getting yourself to go into the flow state, I think that's what it's trying to achieve. So do
mhm.
you, would you say you've ever been in the flow state?
I think there have been times where I've been in that state of mind. Um, I'm not sure whether it wasn't it wasn't intentionally. It was more it just happened, and then there I was, and it doesn't happen very often. I think quite often, like I'm in the state where I have to. Well, you just have to perform with what you have, and I think it's
Mm,
for me. It's like I have to keep reminding myself, okay, like I don't have to feel good to perform good, but being in that mental state like is going to be, you know, I think again it comes down to training, doesn't it? But like being able to perform in that state, and if you were able to, you know, control your mental side and get yourself into that state, then yeah, I mean, I think that's every athlete's dream.
it is for it to happen naturally, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do. And once you get
Yeah.
into using any of the words that we just both used there, must, have to, should, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all of those words are the wrong words. They're doing words. They're not being words. And it's a strange concept to not be doing. Not pushing to make birdies or not,
Yeah.
making those sorts of doing decisions. It's to let it flow, to accept it. Eventually, will get you in the right direction. We started again at within Perform 72. We started to start to measure that. There are many ways you can measure whether mindfulness is helping you. So you can measure the HRV. You can take the Whoop, see whether your
Yeah.
HRV is improving. If you do meditation, it will actually tell you at the end of a meditation how much you've reduced your stress. And then you can see whether your average stress is reducing over time. You can do subjective assessments where you say, how did you feel? So you could drop something in the journal afterwards and say, I felt a little bit stressed going into, Thursday morning, Friday
Mm-hmm.
morning with the cut or whatever. And then there are actually questionnaires that will check whether you're doing or being, So we're starting to incorporate some of those now so that we can, again, combine them with things like score. We can combine them with pretty much anything you want to combine them with, I mean, a lot of people I've spoken to will say, well, I'm pretty chilled out anyway, I don't really need any of that. I'm pretty chilled out. And I think when you get to your level, I think your average last year was 72.6, something like that. Is that right? Your
Yeah, something
scoring
like that.
average?
Yeah.
And I think I think the girl that won the Order of Merit was 71.6 or something,
Yeah, I think that sounds about right, yeah.
Something like that. So, we're talking about a shot between first and 26th, and any incremental gain you can find, anything you can do slightly better anywhere, whether it's your pillow's more comfortable than her pillow, and so you sleep better, or your recovery is better, or whatever, are the things that are going to get you there, It's difficult to do, but that's what we're trying to do at Perform 72, is help athletes look at all of those individual details, measure those things, and see whether they can find those incremental gains, I'll give you just one other example quickly. We went to the Czech Republic, you remember?
Yes.
And
Yep.
do you remember the greens were terrible? Well, let's
Yeah,
not
they
say
weren't the best.
terrible. They
No.
weren't the best. They weren't the best. And on the putting green, I heard girl after girl after girl just say, "This is terrible. I don't know how we can putt on these. It jumps left, it jumps right." Whereas I also heard a couple of coaches talk to the players and say, "Well, listen, if mentally you can deal with this immediately, you already have an advantage over the other players because you've accepted it. There's no point battling it. Accept it. It's now part of the conundrum, and let's just go and pick it. And you've probably saved a shot mentally by not worrying about it, because you can't control it.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you said earlier on.
Yeah. That was I do remember that week, and it was a tough one. Like, as a player, like, you go out there, obviously it's your livelihood, and you're out there trying to perform, and I do understand the frustration from a player's perspective. But like you said, at the end of the day, it's an element that you just can't control. We don't have control over it. The tournaments are just starting. Like, we're here and we're going to play. We're going to do our job, and that's what we're going to do. And I think you're right. I think being in the mindset of just accepting it as what it is, which was, what I went out there was as the focus of the week, actually. And I think that makes a huge difference. It's massive, when you look at two people that go out there with a, mentality that, one person's going out there thinking, okay, this is stupid. It's not going to do what I want to do. This isn't fair. Carries on. You get one person that goes, okay, well, yeah, it is not great, not ideal, but I'm going to do whatever I can within my power to shoot the best score I can. And I think the difference you see between those two different groups of people is going to be huge by the end of the week. So yeah, and like you said, I think at this level as well, like in this game particularly, the margins are so small, and every little bit that you can improve or have a bit of an edge is going to have an impact for sure. So yeah, that was an interesting week for sure, wasn't it?
It was, but the food was great, and there was free beer in the players' lounge. Do you remember?
Oh, that's always a bonus. Yeah. I saw it in the fridge and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it was good. And they were tall cans, and they were freezing cold, and it was it was a good week. There were a couple of South African boys there, and they took full advantage of the free beer in the
I'm sure they would have, yeah.
Caddying. So do you feel we could do a better job? I mean, do you think by starting to sort of collect more data easier and correlating it to look at more use cases, you think that's something that you would feel is something you can incorporate into your preparation, or are you just too busy already doing what you're doing?
No, I think it's definitely, I'm always looking for areas where I can make it, make my practice more efficient, I think would be the term. I think, because that's one of the things that I would, that I'm continuing to work on is like, okay, like, yeah, like 100%. There are times where you want to put in the hours, but at the same time, you also have to think about other areas like recovery, like just mental, physical recovery, stuff like that. So I think one of the really cool things about like the technology we have at the moment is that it does make data collection and review a lot easier than it would have been in the past. I think, like it just kind of shows up in every part of our lives. And I think being able to collect the data from, just really anything from different areas of our lives, just 24/7, because we're always doing different things, like whether it's our nutrition, our physical training, our sleep, our recovery, our actual golf training, competition. I think there are different areas where we can collect so much data from. And I think, yeah, the challenge is probably going to be like, being able to connect those and also analyzing them accurately. But really, I think the more data we have, then we have the tools to work with and to be able to build better, how would I say, like a blueprint for success, or be able to come up with ways that's going to be able to allow us to perform to our best. And like you said earlier too, like the margins are so small as well. So yeah, in all those areas, there's always going to be something that can be gained, and I think that's going to be a great thing for not just golfers, athletes, really anyone, really everyone going about their daily lives. I think it's going to be a really cool tool to have. I think that would be pretty exciting if that could be the case.
Exciting times, yeah. So would you, I noticed that the company Arcos, we actually integrate the Arcos sensors as well, so that we can take automated data scoring. Now, I know the PGA are now allowing those sensors to be used in tournaments. I actually don't know the exact ruling. So I'm waiting for Arcos to come back to me and tell me where it's used. But the PGA and supporting tours, Corn Ferry, can now use those sensors. Would you be up for using sensors on the end of your golf clubs?
Yeah, I mean, I've never tried them actually. Like, I actually haven't. I've definitely read about them, and I've spoken to a couple of people that have. Definitely haven't tried it. Possibly, like, I wouldn't be declining it at all. Like, I wouldn't be like, oh no, absolutely not. Be definitely worth exploring. I think it would be an interesting one where you can, like we said, it's just another way to gather data, I think, and that could be a cool thing to have a look at, and it'll definitely be interesting, the stuff that we can get from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to go there eventually. I mean, you saw the tech they were using last week indoors. I mean, eventually we'll be doing this. I mean, if you remember, about a year ago, I think Apple opened up their development for their Apple Watch to use all of the sensors that exist inside the Apple Watch.
Yeah.
So developers can now take whatever data, acceleration data, rotational data, directional data out of an Apple Watch if you happen to be wearing one, and you can create a golf app just from the Apple Watch wearers, which is a huge community. So so those things, whether they're in the clubs or not, will come along. And believe it or not, the sensors can even now imagine what the body's doing. So if the sensor is going in one particular direction at a particular speed, they can actually imagine the body and create a visualization of the body as to what that's doing in relationship to the sensor. So I think the technology is going to go crazy over the next few years. So let's hope you can find some small incremental gains from it. So looking forward to 25. Talk us through the season. How many events have you got planned on the LET? Are you playing on the LET, or are you going somewhere else?
I'll be on the LET for another season, which I'm actually very excited about it. I had a look through the schedule. I can't remember exactly how many events we have on there. I think I'm throughout the year. I'm planning on playing 24, 25. I can't quite remember. But yeah, definitely exciting. We had a few new events come up on the schedule, a couple of new locations, a couple of new courses. Be able to play a couple of the bigger events. I'll be playing the Saudi International and the Scottish Open, which I haven't been able to last year or the last 2 years. So that's definitely an exciting one to put on the schedule. Yeah, I mean, we're starting up again in 3 weeks' time in Morocco. So that's coming up very quickly, and yeah, that's a good place to start, and we kind of make our way throughout the globe, and then get to mainland Europe sometime during May, which is going to be nice. And yeah, it's a really cool tour. I'm really excited for it, to be able to, get back out there and compete and catch up with a few people that I haven't been able to see over the winter time, or their winter time, our summertime. But yeah, no, it's going to be a really cool year, I think. I hope, and yeah, I'm sure I'll have a lot to gain from it as well.
Cool. And are you doing anything different this year? Obviously working on parts of your game, but you've been on the tour 2 years now. You're an old hand at this.
I'm
Is there
all
anything
hand at this
different you're going
now.
to bring into?
Climbing up through the ranks here. No, not really. I mean,
I
it
think we
is
had in
definitely
Switzerland.
good.
We had a
Yeah, yeah.
no, sorry. I was just going to say in Switzerland. I think we had a 14-year-old girl play in the field. Was that right?
I think we did. I think it was, yeah,
We
14.
did,
Like,
yeah.
yeah,
So you are an old
it
hand.
was. We were young.
So are you doing you're going to add anything different? I interrupted you. Are you going to do
No,
anything different this year? Anything fundamentally different? No.
no, I don't think so. Not fundamentally different. There's definitely areas where I've made a few adjustments in terms of probably a couple of technical, not really technical, really. It's more about adding new things to my toolbox that I can kind of utilize out there. Nothing really crazy, no changes. I mean, I'll still be kind of looping for myself most of the year, I think. And yeah, I think it's not going to be crazy different from what I did last year. It's just going to be a few improvements here and there that I hope is going to make a bit more difference and be able to allow me to be a bit more consistent, I think, is one of the goals for the year. And yeah, have a bit more of a steady boat throughout the season. But yeah, it'll
Right.
be interesting to see how it goes.
You are Little Miss Consistent for sure. When when I'm watching you play, it's beautiful to watch how consistent you are on some of those courses. So just wrapping up on the technology side of things, is there anything else you think you need from a technology point of view this coming year? You know, is there a particular stat that you'd like to collect that you weren't collecting before? And is there anything that you'd like your coach, to sort of collaborate with the tech providers that will give you an edge? Do you think? I'm putting you on the spot here. Sorry.
Interesting. No, I'm just trying to think about it now. Can't think of any off the top of my head, to be honest. I mean, I think for me, I would like to be more. I would like to be able to analyze data better. I think there's a lot of data already, and like there's a lot of data that I don't have. I'm sure that I'm not aware of and things like that. But I think I would like to be able to learn to be able to kind of analyze those data properly, be able to, I think talking to different people around in this field is going to be really helpful for me. Just kind of learn the way you can look at things and not so much be caught up in the as eyes of the player, but just looking at the data on their own and see how they have an impact. I think that's going to be one of the key things for me. Trying to think. I mean, I think I'd really like to. It's been really interesting chatting to you because, now that I'm going back through, it would be interesting to compare some of the stats that I'm getting from Upgame on my golf side of things to like my Whoop data and stuff like that, which I haven't really focused too much on until now. It's probably an area that I haven't really dived too deep into. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I think for me, mainly, it's going to be keeping my eyes open, just being open to seeing different kinds of data and see what it can show me. Maybe things that I'm not expecting, maybe they are, but it's just all going to be things that's going to add. So, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's bringing it all together. Then I know some golfers don't want to see any of the data. It's just a feel thing for them. They just go out and play. But unfortunately, that isn't where the game's going. And once then you've then got to accept and have the mental composure to not go chasing or pushing or worrying about the things that have been identified, but compartmentalize them and work on them. And I think the one thing I found talking to the girls last year, which was fascinating for me, is that coming from a tech background and a data background, a data analysis background, I'd say it's this, and this. And they'd say, yeah, but Jeff, there are reasons for that, So it's so much a collaboration with the player and the player's strategy and the player's thought process and the course layout. You can't just say you're not hitting it far enough, So the collaboration part of it, I think, is also something as the technology develops. I think our coaches need to understand how to use that data along with the mentality of the player as well.
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
It's been fascinating. I could talk about this stuff all day long, and I love listening to your perspective on it. You are the most important thing here. You're the one that's got to go out and make those scores next year. Saudi will be amazing. I think there's a big purse in Saudi, and not everybody managed to get there this year, so that's going to be amazing. And let's try and have some deeper conversations. I do have one other thing I'd like you to do, if you don't mind. We did have a young Indonesian player ask if she could jump on this with me. a girl I coach down here in Indonesia, and she said, "Could I send you some questions? Would you mind answering the questions for her?"
No, not at all. Fire away.
So give me 1 second.
Okay.
Ollie will edit out any delays here. But I'm going to. She's done an introduction which I won't play for you, but I'll play you the first question. Okay.
I've prepared a few questions to better understand your journey as a golfer and hear any advice you might have for young players.
Can you hear that, or shall I put it up again?
Share with us how you got started in golf.
I'm going to do that again. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Are you ready?
I've prepared a few questions to better understand your journey as a golfer and hear any advice you might have for young players like me. Can you share with us how you got started in golf? Was there a specific moment or person who inspired you to pursue this sport?
You want to try that one?
Yeah, that was good. So, how I got started in golf. So it was funny, like my dad got my brother and I into it. So he never really played a whole lot of golf. But yeah, I think I was about 12 and my brother was about 10, and we just started going down to the golf course, our local club. And, I think thankfully, like the club that we actually still practice there a lot actually while we're home. And they were really, really inviting to both of us. They were just, the ladies would let me kind of play with them on the Saturday, and the guys would kind of take my brother under their wings. And I think we just started there, and that's just where we started, and it's still where we are, and which is really cool. I think I had a really cool environment to start in, and had a lot of juniors around my age in the region that I live in. So that's just really how it started, and it just took off from there.
Fantastic.
So what was the
Question
second
number
question?
2?
I forgot now.
How do you mentally prepare for big tournaments and maintain focus under pressure?
Yeah, so how do I prepare for... So it's a funny one. For me, I try and prepare the same way for any tournament, whether it's a tournament on the Aussie Tour, whether it's on the LET, whether it's one of the bigger events that I really want to perform well in. I think for me, it's about having the same preparation. So I don't try and do anything different in a bigger tournament, because then I think it adds extra meaning for you, which you're always going to have, because you always have that mentality that you're always going to want to play well in those bigger ones. But I think it's important to keep it consistent, because you know the recipe that works well for you, you know the preparation that works well for you. So really just keep everything the same, just do what you can as best as you can like you normally do, and then try and let the result take care of itself, is how I would look at it.
Abby will love that answer, and at some time I'll explain to you why she'll love that answer. She recently played for Indonesia in effectively the Indonesian Olympics, and she took 3 or 4 months out to prepare for it, which was different to all other tournaments, and probably didn't get the result she wanted because of the pressure that was built up over there. So good answer. Right, one more.
Many young golfers, including me, look up to players like you. What advice could you give to junior golfers who aspire to play on the LET or other professional tours? How do you handle setbacks, such as tough rounds or missed cuts, and what advice can you give for staying motivated during challenging times?
Great questions here. I'm really this is such great questions. What advice could I give? I think one of the things
I put you on
is
the spot.
obviously this is I think everyone says it, but I think it's really important that you continue to enjoy the game, whether it's the game or whether you enjoy the competition side of things, or whether you enjoy the environment that you get on tour. Whatever the case that might be for you, I think it's really important that you continue to do what you do because you enjoy it. I think that's one of the things that's super important and that can kind of be forgotten, especially as you kind of climb. You go from junior to senior. The women's level, you go to college golf and you turn pro, and I think it's still the same, whether whatever level you're at. I think it's important that you keep enjoying it and have that be your drive for working hard. I think that's one of the strongest things that can allow you to put in the hard hours. And I think it kind of goes into the second question as well. How do you handle setbacks? I think it's important again to go back to the reason where you continue to do it as well. If you're, not sure what the example would be, but let's say one of the things personally for me, whenever I go to tournaments and I see young kids out there, with their parents and just watching golf, and they get a golf ball from a player and they just get so excited. And for me, that's one of the my favorite things to see out on the golf course. And for me, it doesn't matter whether I've played poorly that day or whether I had a light round of my life. It's still makes me very happy to see that. So I think things like that. One of the things that gives me joy out on the golf course, and I think that's probably one of the things that I go back to when I'm I don't want to go out and practice today, or I don't want to go and prep, because you have those days. But when you got something like that to go back to, I think it does make it a hell of a lot easier for you to do what's needed. So yeah, I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think I think as she said, that definitely inspires, and the answer's perfect again for the situation she's in. I know why she's asking you these questions, and I've only just realised as she's asking them. So I think all the questions are finished. Let me check, but one last little thing.
Thank you so much, Momoka, for taking the time to answer my questions. Hearing about your journey and experiences will mean a lot to me and other junior golfers in Indonesia. I wish you continued success in your career. I'll be cheering for you from Indonesia.
Oh, how sweet.
Oh.
That's so cool. It's amazing.
Thanks. No, that's it. So now that will mean a lot to the junior girls down here as well, for you to say something to them. So fantastic. It's been a pleasure chatting to you. I look forward to seeing you at the first event. I'll be there in Europe when we get to the first event, and I look forward to saying hi and grabbing a coffee and supporting you as you go through things. And we'll catch up on data, I'm sure, and I'll bore you over that a couple more times, I'm sure, before.
No, it would be great. It would be good to see you. I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you so much for having me today. It was really cool chatting to you. And, for me, it's very insightful as well. Definitely an area where I can learn a lot as well. So always a pleasure chatting to you.
Cool. Thanks, Momo. Have a good season.
Worries at all. Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.